Last night we counted 3, which means that this evening, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we are approaching the midah of Netzach Shebachesed. Netzach Shebachesed, as we explained yesterday, Tiferes is something that people don't necessarily understand intuitively. The midah of Netzach as well is getting into territory that people aren't normatively familiar or comfortable with. The midah of Netzach is the midah of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the word Netzach in Hebrew today means one of two things. It either means eternity, right? When you say something is lanetzach, it means forever. Lanetzach, netzachim, forever and ever. That's midas ha'netzach. But lenatzach also means to be victorious, to win. Because the truth is that victory means total victory. That's what, when we are davening that tzal should be menatzach, it doesn't just mean that they should win a skirmish, that they should be victorious in a particular battle, meaning lenatzach, it means to win conclusively, totally. That's the idea of lanetzach, is to be totally victorious, which truthfully is a midah that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. Meaning, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Hayah Haveviyah, he was, he is, he will be. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only thing in existence and outside of it that is lanetzach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is eternal. And yet, despite the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is eternal, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly victorious, eternally victorious, meaning the Rebbeinu Shalom is always in charge, is always in control, is always the Melech Malchei Amlachim, he desires to do chesed with us. Means that we can appreciate, we can develop a relationship of Avas Hashem, which is the midah of chesed, by thinking about the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is lanetzach, the Rebbeinu Shalom who is eternal, who is totally omnipotent beyond time and space, and yet cares about me. And just that understanding of us being the product of the care and concern and love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the eternal, supreme, beyond time, space, and capacity of any fathomability that any human being could ever have. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he cares about me. That's called Netzach Shebachesed. Through the midah of Netzach, through HaKadosh Baruch Hu's midah of Netzach, we can develop a greater appreciation of his chesed for us, and we can, in some way, shape, manner, or form, respond in kind by appreciating that immense chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for us. That's Aleph. Netzach Shebachesed. But the truth is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't just want to be menatzach us. He doesn't just want to be victorious over us. In fact, the opposite is true. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be menatzach over him. And you see this within the two individuals that show up in today's midah. It's Moshe Rabbeinu and Avraham Avinu, both of whom were menatzeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They were victorious over HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says to Avram, I want to destroy Sodom. And Avram says, Ribbono Shel Olam, I don't want you to destroy Sodom. What if there's tzaddikim there? And he has a whole haggling and a shuk, kiviyachol, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Back and forth and back and forth. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at every point, he says to him, if there'll be 45 tzaddikim, I'll save Sodom. And what about 40? And what about 30? And what about 20? Avram Avinu is constantly haggling with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning Hashem wants us to be menatzeach him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that the world has to run on systems of checks and balances, of midas chesed and midas gevura and midas tiferes, but he wants us to be menatzeach him, that he should be more in accordance with midas chesed. That's what Hashem wants from us. Meaning he wants us to look at each other and say, Ribbono Shel Olam, how could you do it to them? How could you treat one of your kids like this? How could you do this? Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat? That the judge of the whole world shouldn't do justice? Justice is chesed. That we should demand from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we should be menatzech him. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is offering that to us and is inviting us to participate in this kind of tefillah, this kind of conversation, this kind of relationship with him, that's also part of the midah of Netzach Shebachesed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be menatzech him, to beat him, and that's why Chazal have a phrase, Nitzchuni banai, my children have been victorious over me. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets no greater nachas in the world than having children defending other children. That's called the midah of Netzach Shebachesed. But beyond that, within our relationship between us and ourselves, that's between Adam La'atzmai, there is the great midah of netzach shebachesed, that a person has to be menatzeach over themselves for the sake of increasing their chesed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Means that sometimes a person will be very interested in doing something that they shouldn't do, or a person will be very interested in not doing something that they should do. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes along and tells us, Chavra, don't do that. Don't do that Avera. Do this mitzvah instead. Don't run away from doing the right thing. Run towards doing the right thing. And we don't want to do it. And that's called having a Yetzer Hara. That's normal. That's part of the program. And when we are menatzeach that Yetzer Hara for the sake of Avas Hashem, because, Rebbeinu Hashem, I love you. I want to do this Avera like crazy. But I love you more than I love the Avera. That's called Netzach Shebachesed. I stay away from the Avera because there's a God in this world, and I love him. Because I love the Rebbeinu Hashem because he loves me. So that's also Midas Netzach Shebachesed. What about in the world of Ben Adam Lechavera? So this is halacha in the Rambam. The Rambam writes that there are different madregas in the world of giving tzedakah. What's the highest form of giving tzedakah? You give them? Even higher than that. You give them parnasa. Give them parnasa is even higher than where the giver and the receiver don't know. Why? Because when you give them tzedakah, ultimately, there's still a feeling that they are receiving and that someone else is giving. They are mekabel. They are not able to be mashpia. They're not able to give over. Meaning they're still limited in their capacity. But when you give the opportunity for somebody to get a job, you teach them a trade, you give them a parnasa, give them the capacity to be able to earn their own income, at that point in time, the individual ceases to become simply a recipient, but also becomes somebody that can generate something within themselves, which means that the chesed that you did is la netzach. That's called netzach shebachesed. You want it to be that when you do chesed, that chesed is eternal. That you did chesed for somebody, and now that chesed lost. You did it. Chas v'shalom, that a person, and there are Yetzer Haras like this in the world, that person might feel, I like being in the position that they come back to me to ask again. Oi! But that Yetzer Hara exists. I like to be in the position that somebody I like to be giving. So I like to be in the position that somebody's going to come up to me again and ask me, can you help me again? And I'll say yes again. I'm a Bal Chesed. The meaning of Netzach Shebachesed is that every Chesed that you do should be with the attempt for it to be eternal. If you could do Chesed for this person once, that they would never need that Chesed ever again, that's Netzach Shebachesed. That's the greatest Chesed that you can ever do for anybody, is to give them a Chesed that they never need to come back and ask again, because you have then preserved their dignity now for all time. It's chesed that is eternal. And in that, we partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creating the world. Olam chesed yibaneh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sustains the world constantly, but without us feeling ashamed about it. We don't walk around every day feeling like, I'm a nebach, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody. We should. We'll talk about that tomorrow to a certain extent. Midas hahoy. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the ability to feel like we can be menatzech as well. That we can also have some victory. We can also have some eternity, and that's the goal of the midah of Netzach Shebachesed in the world of Ben Adam Lechavera and Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, to be continued tomorrow.